morning, everybody. Rise and shine. It's morning coffee time. So, welcome everybody to the show. It's Friday morning. Good morning, Purple Princess. Good morning, Alex. Thank you for being here. It's Friday. Oh, I love our Fridays. And I love our Friday coffees because what I realized about today is that these shows are kind of, I know that the recap, right? Good morning, Tana. They're the recap to the week, but they're also kind of like that moment where I don't always like I have a plan, but then I don't have a plan, but I don't really feel like in the Friday morning show we have to stick to the plan because it's just time. It's just time to be here. It's time to share coffee with each other. It's time to jump, kind of recap the week and take a Dear Diary moment. And, it was funny. I was describing the show like it's my Dear Diary moment. And somebody was like, oh my God, I haven't heard that in forever. So Dear Diary, guys. And so today I wanted to talk about listening. Now we had the show on Wednesday with Jen Dodds. And for those of you who got to see it live or got to watch the recap, Jen is somebody who I have known since I began my hypnotherapy, becoming a clinical hypnotherapist journey. And I, like I said, infiltrated the family because her stepmom Leslie and I became really close friends because at the time I was blind, and when I was in school, it turned out that Leslie and myself lived 5 minutes from each other, and 5 minutes was a bit of a stretch. It was probably like 2, but she offered to drive me home because my parents were driving me in the morning, and she was like, well, I'm going that way anyhow, so on the days that I'm teaching I will drive you home, and the days I'm not, you'll have to get a ride home. She didn't know who I was, really. We had an hour and a half conversation where she decided in that moment that I was going to be somebody a part of her life. And that I think, I didn't know at the time when I met her how intuitive and connected she was. And I discovered that as our relationship, blossomed, and I got to know her better, and we got to really kind of get to see who each other were at the core. I mean, like I said, in this course, whether you take Becky's course or you take Jen's course or you take Dolores Cannon's course or anybody else's courses, those courses that have been around for decades and offer interactive work, you are going to get to see the core of who you are, and you're going to get to see the core of who your fellow students are. And I had the actually honor of working with Leslie myself. After class, I did some sessions with her because I was still a little like, what am I doing? I came out of class confident, but I also had this like, what am I doing now kind of thing. Because nothing in my world was textbook. I never had a textbook session until a year and a half ago. Everything was different. Everything, we talked about going with the flow and being that creativity side of it. That was my world. And that has been my world in hypnosis. And I think I know why, because as you all know, I'm a squirrel. And so when things aren't textbook, I almost do better. Like I realized that textbook session, I was like, oh my God, that's what it looks like. Like I was like, I've never been stunned before. And I had a moment of stun, like, oh my God, that's what it looks like. So anyhow, the one thing that we talked about on Wednesday was listening. What makes a good hypnotherapist is the ability to listen and to absorb and to hear and absorb the information that your client or the person in the chair, the person you're working with, is giving you. Now, I thought about that. All my life, I've been a listener. Sometimes I get really excited when I'm in channel mode, and I do want to, like, I do have to work at not interrupting, because once I'm channeling, I try to get the information out as fast as I can, because, when you're channeling, I don't actually always remember the information that I'm getting. I don't know if any of you have experienced that, where you start to channel, you start to, download that information and sharing it with somebody. So you're there, but I'm always out here and I'm watching it, but it doesn't mean I'm not always supposed to absorb the information, because most of the time if I'm channeling, it's not for me, it's for you. And so I was thinking about that, how listening, it's not just the therapist side of things, but how important it is for us to listen to ourselves. to hear ourselves. Now, I've talked about your self-coaching. I've talked about your self-talk. We've talked about that. I've probably done this topic till it's blue in the face. And I'm going to continue to do it because of the importance of it. The importance of it in the fact that learning to listen and hear yourself can be a vital tool in your ability to create your own personal shifts and transformations. That was a well-timed sip, by the way, because I want that one to sink in. I want it to sink in because we often get in this flow of conversation with ourselves, whether you hear it through an internal voice or you're speaking out loud to yourself. I mean, I always do it out loud, even when I'm in the grocery store, as you guys all know. But we often get into the conversation with ourselves some way, in one way or another, whether it be journaling, whether it be doing your podcast, but we are having whether it be just sitting and talking, or even in meditation, you start talking to yourself. We're having a conversation with ourselves. And that conversation is an expression of what is going on in our internal landscape, what is going on inside, whether what we've been thinking about, what we're focused on, what happened yesterday, what happened 7 months ago, what happened 10 years ago. There is some form of connection to that conversation. And we become, and I have been guilty of this. So this is why I'm talking about this, because sometimes I don't pay attention to that conversation. How many of you guys don't pay attention to the conversation that you're having with yourself? I mean, it could be a full-time job paying attention to the conversation that I have with myself, but that conversation can run away with me. And it's, we talk about the catch, check, change method, the 3 C's. This is why that method is so widely and so popular out there, because we run away with ourselves. But when we run away with ourselves and we're not listening, we're not hearing ourselves, even in conversations, when we're talking to somebody, we need to hear ourselves. We need to hear and listen to the words that are coming out of our mouths, because we have an energy behind them. We have an emotion behind them. And that emotion and that energy gets put into our physical reality. Words are magic. Yes, you're going to hear the dogs. It's morning and they're romping around. And Walker desperately wants to be a part of the show. He's sitting at the door right now. And we might hear him grunt because my Rottweiler likes to grunt. It's pretty funny. I'm trying to catch it on film one day so I can share it with you guys. But we need to listen to ourselves, and we need to step back and go, okay, how am I imprinting this conversation upon somebody else or myself? And where is that coming from within me? And that will change things when you start to when you start to listen and hear what you're saying to yourself or saying to somebody else, and the energy, the emotion behind it, because really that's all it takes is to put it into reality and start to recreate that timeline and then step into it, because there's the frequency, there's your vibration, there's your energy. And then all of a sudden our words are magic. They are our tangible component in this physical reality. We don't look at it like that because we just have these random conversations, but we don't look at the power of that tangible component. It's like writing it down in your journal. There is a tangible piece now. Now, you may not see that tangible piece, and we often think, well, if we can't see it, we don't need to believe it. But we hear it, and your sense of hearing, your inner sense of hearing, is as powerful as your sense of sight. And I learned this, and I never thought about this, but I learned this when I lost my sight, when my sight went awry, when it took its own journey. My sense of hearing to this day is scary, acute, and sensitive. So much so that I can hear conversations from rooms away. And that sense of hearing became one of my tangible components to moving around this world and being able to navigate things, because I did learn how sound bounces off of things, It didn't always save me from walking in the wall, but it did help me in many, many situations, or it became very overwhelming to the point where being in public became exceptionally hard because I would be overstimulated. I would be like, and then I would actually close down. And I like to think of myself as this big, bold, brave person in most situations. But when the noise got bad, I would just like that. Or if it became too much, and working with animals, being able to hear just the slightest tone and shift in their gait could tell me a lot about what was going on in the body. So our words and what we hear and what is created behind those words that we're either sharing or absorbing or both, because when we talk, we're sharing and we're absorbing, because we're either confirming or we're starting to take this different point of view with ourselves, and that might be shifting. That we have to listen to ourselves. We have to listen to the conversations that we're having externally, internally. We have to listen to the conversations that we're engaging with, because there's emotion and energy behind those words, whether it's me talking to you, you talking to me, us, even in public, we are picking up on other people's information, other people's emotion. That's how we, begin to absorb it without even understanding it. So when we think about the conversations that we want to have with ourselves, what does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that sound like? What is that creating within you, for you? And what daily timeline is it setting you up on? Which does that timeline match with the end? Your daily timeline is your processing, your system to get you to your end result. So what is your system? What level is your system running at? And so when we start to listen to ourselves, and I often catch myself all the time, like I'm not perfect, guys. I definitely go on tangents. Now my tangents tend to, because I step back and I'm like, wait, hold the button. Where is this taking me? How is this affecting me? What does this mean to me? Why have I begun this? Where are my triggers? What triggered this? And I take a moment and I reflect for a second. I get a lot of information in those tangents of maybe what I need to, where I'm still holding something, or where something is still lodged within my landscape that doesn't line up with the version of myself that I am evolving into. And that really gives me a path. So when you start to listen and hear yourself, you actually begin to set up your next stage of the game, your next stage of the journey. And it can be really enlightening. It can be almost shocking. I mean, I've had moments where I'm like, oh, how did I miss that? And you will have those moments where you'll be like, does this make a difference for me? And that should be a question you ask. When you go on these tangents, or you feel you start to recognize where they're coming from, the energy behind it, the emotion behind it, the tangible part of it, the conversation that you're having with yourself or somebody else, are you encouraging and compounding and anchoring those emotions into your conscious waking timeline through your subconscious imprinting and perception and experience? And is that helping you, or is that creating friction? And if it's creating friction and you feel that way, what has to where do you need to go, and what has to happen to help you resolve that, to redefine that, to shift that story? So that conversation, you'll be able to tell the story without being emotionally imprinted and connected to it. Like when my health first rewound and I could see again, and my kidney function had gone up, and I was feeling better. I was absolutely terrified that I was going to lose it all, and terrified that it was all a cruel joke by the universe. And I was so emotionally, hyper-vigilantly attached to that journey that talking about it, I would be in tears. And the tears weren't bad. I'm not saying they were bad, but I was still the blind person. I was still the guy in kidney failure. And deep down, even though I could tell you I recovered my sight, I didn't feel that way. And it took me a long time because there was still a lot of healing. Even though things had changed in my physical body, there was still an abundance of healing that I needed to go through that was contributing to that. And I'm still finding little corners or crumbs around the corner, but I'm not emotionally attached to that story anymore. It's a great story. It was a great adventure. But I don't have the emotional component that drives me back into that timeline, that helps me relive that so that I start to become that person again. Because every time I talked about it, because of the emotion and the energy behind it, that tangible component, and here he comes. Oh, hello, puppies. Welcome. My dogs, Kona, and I've got the computer propped up so you can't see them, but if I had the other computer on, you'd see them, have come to join us. And oh, this is their dream, guys. They opened the office door. They just hit it. So they think they're pretty smart. But yeah, so that I was completely recreating that timeline for myself. And so I had to really go in and see where those emotions, where that vibration and frequency was sitting, so that when I talked about this, I wasn't telling my subconscious mind that I needed to go back there, that that's what I wanted in life. Not that, being blind was a beautiful thing. I got to see the world very differently. And I honestly wouldn't trade that experience. I don't need to relive the experience. I'm good with releasing that experience, but it taught me so much. That being said, if I hadn't started listening to myself, if I hadn't started taking time to hear myself, I may have put myself back into that place because of the connection that I was constantly communicating in a tangible form. And whether I was writing about it, whether I was talking about it, I was still so hyper vigilantly connected to it. And I realized that. And so the healing, the crumbs that I've found have allowed me to, know that that was an experience that I had, but that was then and this is now. And I can draw on that experience and I can have this conversation, but there's not an emotional space of creation redefining or revisiting me living in the past. And that's the thing. When we get into these conversations with ourselves, where are you living? Are you living now? Are you living then? Are you living in your future? Where are you living? And where are you creating? And what's holding you? When we talk about being present and being in the now, sometimes it takes us hearing and listening to ourselves to recognize whether we're truly in the now. Are we here in this moment? Are we experiencing this moment to the fullest? Or are we recreating or redefining something that once was, or what we think will be? And that's what I wanted to talk about this morning, because I think that if we can start to recognize that and notice that, then we can start to utilize that ability to take energy, put it into thought, have the thought, and put it into a tangible component that helps us create that and the timeline that we would like to exist in, that we'd like to have, that we'd like to create it. And it gets us in our creative flow. When we're in our creative flow, we get inspired and we start to notice those little moments of synchronicity that are our higher self, our cosmic inner and higher self guiding us, that are our intuitive abilities and tools coming forward and shining through. And this will help us day in and day out to stay in our space, the space that we choose to live in, the space that we want to live in, the space that we are working so hard, that you guys have been working so hard to create from. I mean, we're all on this journey. We're all doing things to self-evolve ourselves, whether it's, one thing or another, is one technique or another. We're all, working at moving forward, whether we think we're on the upward side or the downward side, whether we're in a speed bump or we're in flow. You guys are putting all this energy and time and yourselves into this process. And I just wanted you to have tools in your toolbox that you may or may not resonate with this conversation. And that's okay. If it doesn't resonate now, it may resonate 10 years from now. It may never resonate. And that's what matters, but that's okay. Recognizing that too is half of the battle, is recognizing where you're drawn to, where you resonate, what inspires you, and working with those tools to create, to unlock, to unwind, to discover, to remember, to just do, to be, and to enjoy the process. Healing, oh my God, healing is not always fun. It's work. And then it becomes fun, and then it becomes work, and then it becomes this self-evolution. And good morning, Stone. Thank you for being here. And we go through these processes, and we go through these moments of healing. And sometimes we don't even know we're healing. That's the other thing. Is if we stop and we take a moment to listen to ourselves and to hear our own internal, external conversations that we're having with ourselves or others around us, we sometimes don't even realize that we've made changes. That is probably one of the biggest things that blew me away in this process that I went on as I became, well, what I believe, an amazing fucking hypnotherapist and soul regressionist guide. Was the soft changes, the changes that happened, that because they were so subtle and so just integrated into our the new daily timeline, that the shock value of it didn't happen because it just happened. And it was natural, and it was like normal, like nothing had ever been different. That was probably one of the biggest things that shocked me about this process, was those changes. The big changes, they were shocking, but the shock value lasted less. Like it was less time for me. But it was those subtle changes where I would step back and I would something would happen. I'd be like, oh Jesus, I totally, what? Oh my God, that worked, that. And it was some of those sessions that were soft sessions, like, where you think, yeah, that was a good session on myself. But like, it didn't feel like one of those aha, like there wasn't this big aha moment, but the aha moment came down the road when I realized that those subtle changes had just automatically happened. And it was as is, it just was. There was no big boom and then change. It was just like soft change. And that's the thing, is when we start to listen and hear ourselves, we start to actually begin to see those softer changes that are just integrating themselves as if it was just always the way we were. There's, it was we weren't any other way, because deep down, those core things that are starting to wake up and that you're opening space for, those are who you are. And that's part of this process, is beginning to listen and hear yourself, to see where you line up in the core, where your core values line up with the conversation that you're having with yourself. Because our core values, our core is what is going to evolve in our highest and greatest timeline. And it's going to be the greatest, and is the greatest version of ourselves. And those are things that are non-negotiable. Core values are your soul values. And those soul values are, we live in this world that comes with shade and light and shadow and, brilliance. But at the core of it all, we all are a light. And we may, not always live the light life in our timelines and in our experience and in our incarnations, because I know for sure I haven't always been the light. I've actually been the darkness. And I just, like, when I went and saw that, I was actually really shocked, because here I am, this person in this incarnation, living in this space. But what I realized is, going back and seeing my lives of shade and shadow taught me that I wouldn't choose that again. No matter what happened in this life, I wouldn't choose that again. And that is the lesson in those. And when I went back to those shade lives, was to learn to heal, because there's a lot there, but also to understand who I was at the core, and I would live from my core in this life. And that I know without a shadow of a doubt. It doesn't, mean that I can't get angry and I don't have moments, but I would always choose, and I know that. And that was part of that one, going back to that one life, was part about listening and hearing the fact that I would choose differently, even if it meant that I was compromised physically. And lives of learning, yeah, they are lives of learning. They completely are. And some of those are your greatest assets in this incarnation, to go back and see your lives of learning, because you realize it changes your perspective on yourself. You realize that, oh my God, in a pinch, I know who I'm going to be. I know what I'm going to choose. And that makes those in a pinch moments not so scary, or not. It takes away some of the unknown as well, which we all know it's kind of fun. I actually think the unknown is kind of fun, but sometimes it is to have a grasp on myself and how I'm going to react in those unknown moments. It's kind of what I want in life. But yeah, so sometimes, we need to step back and we need to hear, we need to see, we need to listen, and we need to bring all of our tools into play to help understand and help us grow and help us evolve and help us discover and uncover where we are at. If you know where you are at, then you know where you want to go. But it takes time. It takes time. And this is, we've talked about the self-care stuff. We've talked about all of this. It's about making those, that's the time that helps you understand where you're at. And that is beautiful, because wherever you're at is perfect. Because now you know, and whatever you choose to do with that is perfect. And however you choose to navigate that is wonderful and perfect. And if you choose to stay where you're at, that's perfect too, because that's where you need to be right now. And that's the thing. We think we have to change fast. We think we have to do all this stuff. But you need to understand is that your pace is your pace. And your soul has set into pace. Like, that was a bit of an off-topic tangent, but I'm going to do it anyhow because it's Monday and it's coffee time. Why not? When I lost my sight, I went and got a reading. And this gentleman gave me a wonderful reading. I didn't want to hear it, by the way. I totally pulled a Jen. That's why I stopped doing cards, actually. So I had to actually step back and say I was sorry. He told me that none of my life wouldn't change for another 5 years. I have been desperate for change for 15 years at that point. And I was so mad. I'm like, no, I'm going to make it happen now. And I was willing to do everything that needed to be done. I have to tell you, no matter how much I fought, how much I tried, the rhythm that my soul set up, that was the guideline. And there was really not a lot of changing that. I mean, I'm sure I was ahead of the game when it came to the moment, because I had done some work for it, but I had to wait for that moment. When that was set into motion, I had to wait a little bit. And it was kind of funny because I realized now that sometimes timing is everything. And timing will have its moment, and timing will have its time. And trying to speed it up or slow it down sometimes the flow is not going to allow that. So remember, your timing is your timing, and you don't need to fight yourself. So if you're not inspired to do something, give it a pause. See when you are inspired. See the synchronicities. See the moments that work for you, and go with it, and know that that's going to be perfect. So, and take time to listen and hear yourself, guys, because maybe you are ready, maybe you're not, and that's just where you're at. And this time, celebrate that. It's okay to recognize something and not even recognize something and not be ready to dive into it quite yet. And when you are, because that's when you're going to make the change. That's when you are going to make that shift. Because doing it before, you may not make the shift. Like, you may go through, like I've done it. I've gone through the motions. I thought I was all there. And then, surprise, I wasn't. Because I wasn't ready and I wasn't hearing the words. I wasn't the real definition of the part of me that was doing something. I was giving it a soft definition, which didn't take me on the right path. And then all of a sudden it was like, nope, those are the words. That's it. That's the part. Let's go do this. And boom, bang, done. So, but it took me listening. It took me hearing the conversation that I was having with myself. It took me having several conversations with myself to figure out where it was coming from, what it was, how it was affecting me, why it was affecting me. And then my journey of when it began and when it became into a part of my personality, when that part became active, when that emotion became active and empowered. So, yeah, that's the conversation today. Take time to listen. Take time to hear yourself. Take time to listen and hear how you respond and react to the conversations that you're having with the world around you, and how they affect you, and how they tie into your emotional space of creation. Because that's vibration, that your emotions are energy vibration, and they become your tangible component that downloads into your reality, that changes your perspective, that shifts the way you see or hear or feel about yourself, the world around you. And it's so vitally important to understand where that's at when you're ready. So thank you guys for being here for Morning Coffee with Jen. I appreciate all of you. I'm blessed to be able to do this. I I'm excited to have these conversations with you. I appreciate your comments and your energy and your time and your vibration. You guys are amazing. And so I'm gonna leave. Oh, thanks, Stone. This weekend, wherever you like, and the other thing I was going to talk about this, and I will just do a little bit. Sometimes our weeks don't work out the way they are. We want them to. We hope them to be or want them to be. So remember, guys, you have flow. You have power. You have the ability to go with the flow, even if it's not in the way you thought it would work. Give yourself permission to go with the flow and see how it works out. Because sometimes weeks will be good, sometimes they won't be great. Sometimes they start off with a, oh my God. And sometimes they end with an, oh my God. But wherever you're at today, you got this. You will make it through. You will make it through anything that is happening. You will get to the other side of this. You will. And as you go through this and you go through those moments of not great fun, remember, you are not alone. That we are all here and we're all ready to listen and hear your story and to share your story with you and to hold space for you if you so choose. So remember that, guys. If the days are dark, please don't think that you're alone. We got you, and thank you for being you, and thank you for being in this incarnation, because I get this incarnation isn't all roses and sunshines. I want it to be unicorns, rainbows, and sunshines. I really do, and I'm working at it. But I get that there are shadow days, there are darker days, and so just remember that if you're in those moments, that you're not alone. We got you. All right. So have a wonderful weekend. Have a wonderful self-growth and evolution moments, and just remember this. You got it, guys. And I'll see you Monday for Monday meditation. So have a wonderful and amazing day. Cheers. Do, 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 do.